Hey everybody, welcome back to the worst podcast ever, or welcome to the worst podcast ever. If this is the first one you listen to. We are a Northern Content Network podcast. I am your host, as usual, Alex Fortin.
And I'm your co-host, Dan Clark.
And today we have a special guest that I'm excited. I think it's our second non-comedian guest.
I think so.
Which is cool, because you know if you're not a comedian, then you actually have something interesting for us to talk to you about.
Who was the first one, Serge?
Alien. Oh yeah, I guess so, the third one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Sergio and
Serge
Alien.
is a comedian in his own right, though.
Yeah, it's true. I put that up as a Throwback Thursday episode this week.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah. I have a fake sponsor for us.
Let's do it.
I think our fake sponsor this week should be marijuana, because did you hear Justin Trudeau's?
Yeah.
Yeah, Justin Trudeau had a press conference where he was basically like, yeah, no, now that I'm Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was like, yeah, I'm still for legalizing marijuana.
So far, that guy is our Obama.
Yeah.
He's just like,
So
he's just changed stuff already. And like pretty interesting progressive stuff.
Yeah, well, did you see, I saw a Facebook article going around that was like upset because he wanted to like pull out of Syria.
Yeah, he canceled the purchase of the fighter jets that Canada was going to get. He was going to buy a bunch of like F-35s, which was going to cost like...
I thought it was F-18s.
I think they're F-35s,
Oh.
and like the States is buying like 1,600 of them.
Yeah, of course they are.
And we were going to buy like 60.
Yeah.
But it was going to cost like most of our military budget for like the next 15 years, basically.
Oh, wow.
And he was just like, yeah, they're not actually that good of a plane, and we're not going to buy them because we don't want to really be involved in the war.
Cool. Yeah. See, I saw a bunch of people I saw like a thing. Well, not a bunch of people. I saw one article that was like, oh, it looks like our leader made a dodgy move and likes terrorists. And I was like, oh, fuck.
No, he said he wants to focus on peacekeeping and humanitarian, which is like, how are you upset about that?
Yeah, because rednecks are idiots.
It's because they're used to Stephen Harper.
Yeah.
So he's doing, so fake sponsor is marijuana legalization. I mean, that's
the legalization of marijuana.
That's not even like, no one owns that, so we can just say that's our sponsor.
Yeah.
Because no one owns it.
Yeah, we're sponsored by that.
I mean,
today.
a fake sponsor would be Justin Trudeau's like abs.
Yeah.
I
But
guess.
the legalization of marijuana is our real sponsor. Totally real.
Yeah, that's sponsored because, I think whether you're for or against it, not even that. I think even if you're not gonna smoke.
Yeah, like I don't care. It doesn't affect me in any way. I
You're
don't
not
smoke
gonna
weed.
smoke,
Never
right?
have smoked weed. Like I might try it now if they legalize it. I might try it just to see what's going on.
Yeah.
But like I don't have big plans to become a weed smoker.
But it makes sense because then now they can regulate it and we can make taxes on it, and it's not going to be supporting the drug cartel.
Yeah. Also, potheads can finally shut the fuck up about it.
Plus, it'll take a load off. Yeah, that's the.
That's what I'm most excited for.
Yeah.
The big thing with most like progressive movements is like, okay, sweet, we gotta legalize. Everyone, just be quiet now. Just let it happen.
My favorite is the people who are still trying to justify it. Like, we're going to make tax money and then we're going to be able to make hemp shirts and paper. Well, you want to get high. Shut your fucking mouth.
Yeah, and it's fine if you want to do that, but hemp is a pretty amazing plant.
Like, that's... You know you can, like, already buy hemp. I think I was talking to you about
Yeah,
this.
you were, because someone at work was like, it's hemp and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, like, it's so good that they're legalizing because now we can make hemp clothes and, like, hemp paper. And I was like, you know, like, you can already buy hemp clothing and, like,
And
cloth
hemp
and rope
paper.
and paper and, like, all
Yeah.
that shit. Like, hemp was never illegal. Like...
I think they just want it busted wide open because, like, hemp.
Yeah.
The issue is that's just it's like I think the male version of the plant.
Yeah.
And then the one with the seeds is the
With
female.
the THC is the female, yeah.
So I think people just want like a full can you just ease up on
Yeah.
plants
On plants, please. let us grow the plants.
for a second, please? Can we just try this? So I mean that's cool. So fake sponsor for today, real sponsor. The legalization of marijuana. That's cool.
Yeah. And now our lovely guest, who you heard earlier, is a friend of mine from an employment place that I work at. April is hanging out with us today.
Hello.
And the reason, well, I mean, I guess we'll get to it anyways. But the reason I thought it would be cool to have her on is because you are an ex-Jehovah's Witness, or
Yeah, I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness, and I've been referred to as a third generation Jehovah's Witness, because all of my relatives back to my parents' parents have all been Jehovah's Witnesses. And I think
So were they the ones that converted from
yes.
not Jehovah?
So my grandfather came from Italy, and he was in training to be a Catholic priest. And he was converted in Toronto. And his wife, my grandmother, came from Germany, and I don't know what her religious background was, but she also converted, and then that was how they met. And then my dad's side is similar to that.
Oh, weird. Because I was talking to Dan Taylor, who is a pastor. What is he? Baptist?
He's like a I don't know. He's evangelical.
Yeah, he's evangelical is what I've heard him say.
Yeah.
But and he was saying
it's like
that
First Church of Christ, Edmonton or something.
he was saying going from Christian to Jehovah is like a crazy conversion as well. Like that's super rare.
Really? Yeah, well, what was I even going to say about that? Is First Church of Christ, is that the C3 church?
I can't remember. It's
Okay.
it's I don't know exactly what it is. I don't want to be misquoted in anything, but
Right.
It's like an evangelical denomination.
Right.
Almost like non-denominational, but not quite.
I think about that a lot, about my grandfather making that choice, and then I think for my parents it's completely different because it's all they ever knew.
Yeah.
So there's conversations I can't even have with them because they won't hear it because it doesn't mean anything to them. But I always think if my grandfather had been healthy enough for me to have a conversation with him, I wonder if his perspective would be completely different because he did know something else first.
Yeah.
And it was like he made that choice for our family, because once you're raised in something that's so invasive, your choices are so limited after that. The way you see the world is it's like he decided for my mom how she would live her life, and she'll never change it.
That's crazy.
And that is a very interesting conversion because especially at the time when your grandpa would have converted, it was, a very different religion than it is right now.
Yes, it's changed so much even since I left. When I talk to my aunts and uncles, there's things that I know that are wrong now because they are always revamping. And that's one of the things that they see as keeping themselves true, is that they're always reevaluating what they're teaching and making sure that it still holds true to what they think the Bible is trying to say. But from the outside, it's weird. It's whoa, it
looks like you just keep changing to fit your own needs. Is kind of what I see from the outside. Is like you were telling me the one, because there was 144,000 and then they thought that they had all passed away.
Yes.
So there's so many weird questions, but so to go from Christian, because I think Christianity is the big I'd say especially as far as North America goes, it's Judaism, Christianity, and Muslim.
Right.
Is sort of the three that everyone kind of knows what's going on.
Which all come from the same Abrahamic tradition.
Yeah. Does Jehovah's Witness then branch off of that? Is there a third
for sure.
Bible, or is there...
I would say it's a sect of Christianity, although lots of Christians argue against that because there's one thing that's different, and that's Jehovah's Witnesses are really, really diligent about saying that they don't believe in the Trinity, but they do believe in God and His Son and His Holy Spirit. But because they don't picture Him as there's some three-headed statue that they always show in all their books of this is what the Catholics believe, that God is this three-headed being who has the Holy Spirit, and Jesus and God are the same person. And they're very much that is not what the Bible says, and it says that they're three separate beings. So to me, from the outside, I'm well, what a stupid thing to totally be divisive about.
Yeah.
Because it really who cares? And if it's within 4 words in the Bible that make you think something different, there's 700 million other words in the Bible.
Yeah. And there's so many different translations.
Exactly.
And, versions.
So for that to be the thing, I had a friend in college once when I was still I'm a Jehovah's Witness. She, the first thing she said to me, I think we were going around at school and everyone was talking about religion or whatever, and I said, oh, I'm a Christian. And she said, oh, what kind? Because she's something evangelical. And I said, oh, Jehovah's Witness. And she was like, you're not a Christian. She just, looked me in the eye and said that. And I was like, what? Like, it was the first time I'd ever encountered anyone talking to me like that. And I was like, what do you mean? And she totally gave me shit. Like, she was like, you don't believe in the Trinity and you don't believe in Jesus and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, no, I do believe in Jesus. Like, I definitely believe in, like, I believe it. And I can tell you that I believe in Jesus.
Yeah, well, that's the whole, because when I grew up, I didn't grow up Catholic. I went to Catholic school.
Yeah.
I grew up with nothing, no religion. But I went to Catholic school. And the thing we learned about Christianity was like, if you believe in Jesus as the Son of God, then you're a Christian.
Right.
Like that was their thing. And that's why Muslims are different, because they have the third book, the Quran, where the Prophet Muhammad comes, and they do believe in Jesus, but they don't believe he was the Son of God. They just believe he was another prophet.
Right. Like how the Jews only look at the Old Testament, so they just see Jesus as like, maybe he was a great guy, but he wasn't God's son.
Yeah, well, he was like, so I think there's 3 prophets for them, so they're still waiting on the third, much like Christians are waiting for and I could be totally wrong about this, but from what I've been told, because Christians are waiting for the second coming of Jesus.
Right.
And so they're waiting for their third prophet. So it was Muhammad, Jesus, and then there's another one to come.
Right.
Is their whole deal.
Well, and Jehovah's Witnesses are waiting for Armageddon. Like, it's like any minute. Like, I was at a party with my family. It is any minute. And my aunt was telling me about how this guy cheated on his wife and she couldn't forgive him. And so the elders allowed them to have a divorce, because that's one of the conditions under which they can make an exception. And she's like, but we were really wishing that she would forgive him and that they could be a family, because like that's really what she should have done. And I kind of said to her, like, well, but you can see her side, right? Like, that would really suck. Like,
Yeah, that'd be awful.
if your husband cheated on you, like, even if he was sorry, it sometimes can be like you can't move past it. And she goes, well, it's not really his fault. Like, we're living in these times of the end, and his poor choices are a casualty of these last days. And I was like, okay.
What?
Yeah, all right,
Well,
all
that's a pretty popular, like, Christian belief, where it's like, because we are getting closer, or because a lot of world religions believe that the second coming is getting closer, that Satan is...
Well, of course it's getting closer, because it happens in the future. Everything's getting closer. Everything that hasn't happened yet is getting closer.
If it happens.
Yeah, exactly. That's a big ol' if.
So a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll say, like, well, it's the signs of the times. It means that Satan is working harder on everybody, and he's really stepping up his game to try to divert people away from living a good life so that they will make it to heaven or whatever. And so, like, that kind of stuff's really interesting, because I think it's kind of permeating through Christianity. I'm not going to speak for everyone, but like, I know that, like, I was raised with that a lot.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing that I just want to talk about for a second with, like, Jehovah's Witnesses is that it's a pretty young religion.
Right.
Because I don't understand the origins of it, like, specifically, but I understand, like, some people have told me that it was like an experiment that the founder was trying to do. Some people have told me that it wasn't divinely inspired. I don't really understand, like, how it began.
I've heard a few. I tried to research this, and there's conflicting information. But what I was always taught as a kid was that it started with a study group who were all from different Christian religions, and they all felt like there was something missing from what they had been taught. So they were going to have a study group. They were going to just look at the Bible, and they were going to decide from the Bible what they thought the Bible was trying to say. And I can't remember his name, but the first Jehovah's Witness who founded the church was in that study group.
Yeah.
And they didn't all become Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm pretty sure one of them started the Seventh-day Adventist religion, and he started Jehovah's Witnesses. But this now information is diverging off into stuff that I read on the internet, which isn't anymore what I was taught as a kid. Like, when I was taught as a kid, it stopped with Mr. created Jehovah's Witnesses, and that was all they really told us. But then when I looked it up on the internet, like, there was some more stuff about that, and it was in the early 1900s, so it's not a very old religion.
Yeah, and it's pretty amazing, like, not the influence, but kind of the notoriety that the religion has, because you can talk to almost anybody, and they're like, yeah, I know who the Jehovah's Witnesses are, or I've talked to them, or they've been to my house, or something.
Yeah, you tend to have that effect when you knock on everyone's door.
They're pretty big on, like, proselyting, right, or witnessing,
Yeah.
right, is what it's called.
Yeah, because I guess...
Well, Oh yeah, go ahead.
the language used in the Bible is that Jesus witnessed to the people, like he witnessed God to the people, and so that's the word that they cling to.
And like there are a few distinguishing features that would separate, because if you look at Christianity, it's not that different. It's from the Jehovah's Witness religion. They kind of not picked things and been more serious about them, but kind of taken an overall serious approach to this. And like they have not a different book, but like the New World Translation of the Holy Scriptures. If you read that, compared to
Like the King James.
King James is probably the most traditional book you could use at this point without learning different languages and that kind of stuff. But it is quite a bit different.
Yeah, they actually just released a new one.
Really?
Less than a year ago. It's still called New World Translation of the Holy Scriptures. But they basically said, when we translated our translation at the beginning, there was all kinds of ridicule about, like, they had put back in these 4 letters that show up in the original Hebrew texts.
Is that the Yahweh?
Yahweh, yeah, which no one knows how to pronounce. And so the reasoning that I was taught as a Jehovah's Witness kid was that other religions don't use this word because they're afraid to pronounce it incorrectly and be disrespectful. But
we used Yahweh all the time
in
Catholic school. Oh yeah, we said Yahweh, we had songs about it.
Yes.
We sang hymns.
People used
in
Yahweh.
our uniforms. We actually didn't have uniforms, but we sang cute little hymns in grade 4.
In a little plaid shorts.
We were like
Yahweh is my homeboy on the front of your shirts or something.
that was the rap song.
No,
that we did in grade 4.
But Jehovah is like a translation of what that word might be if it had
because it's like YW something
Yeah.
H, and then if you translate it becomes like Jave or Jehovah, right?
Right. And so Jehovah's Witnesses are all about if we want to call God by his name, and
they interpret that as because they don't believe in the Trinity. So the Trinity is kind of this weird ball of nothingness but everything,
it's
and it's
all so weird.
It's interesting to think about, because when you ask people to explain what they actually believe, because we used to do a lot of stuff when I was a missionary where we would talk to people about how they actually believed in God. And it's and we would ask them, it's well, are you a certain religion? And they would be like, yeah, I'm Catholic. It's okay, so the Catholic Church teaches the Trinity, right? Which is kind of that ball of spirit and Jesus and God.
That was one of my first things where I started questioning. I was probably in grade 5, because that was the weird thing about religion. And I think it's just because it's kind of you tell it to children, is you kind of just believe it, And so I wasn't forced it upon me, and I only ever had it in school. And a lot of people I talk to think if you go to Catholic school that everything revolves around it, but it's no, we still have the same math and same science as you do.
Yeah.
We just also have religion as an extra course.
Yeah.
And then we have ceremonies once a month.
Right.
And so
And you put ashes on your head some Wednesdays.
on Ash Wednesday, one Wednesday a year. Yeah. And so it was weird because I was never really forced into it. My parents weren't religious or anything, but I still believed it just because everyone around me kind of believed it, and that's just sort of what I was told by teachers. And my parents were like, "Yeah, whatever, make your own decision." And then I ended up making my own decision later, but at the time being, and that was one of the first things where I started questioning. I was like, because I asked, I was like, "Well, what is the Holy Trinity?" And the reason I asked is because my brother went to a school called Holy Trinity.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, why? What is the Holy Trinity? And they're like, well, it's God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit. I was like, oh, so just the 3 different people? And they're like, well, they're the same person. I was like, what? I thought Jesus was God's son. They're like, well, he is. I was like, so how can he be him and his son? They're like, well, they're all this great power, so he's in the embodiment of God, but God was also still in heaven.
Right.
And I was like, so he was in 2 places at once? And they're like, well, no, because Jesus was his own separate being, but he is God. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense.
But even if you think of it not like that, even if you think Jehovah's Witnesses do, that God is in heaven and he sent his son down in the flesh to undergo all of this torture to make amends for the mistakes that people made, it still doesn't make any sense.
Oh yeah, that's still
Because why would you send your son to pay for someone else's mistakes and then be like, yeah, made up,
because he
it's all
loves
fixed.
you so much.
Right.
But yeah, that's like,
But,
I'm like,
like,
why did he have to do
Why would
that?
you even think of that? Wouldn't you just think like, I love you so much, I'm going to forgive you? Instead
Yeah.
of like, I love you so much, I'm going to make my son go through all of this terrible stuff.
so that
so
then
that
I
I
can
can
forgive
forgive
you.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like if
You're the
all
only
knowing all-
person in control here. It's all you. It's a one-man show.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want. You didn't have to do that. Like, it seems kind of mean.
Well, that's kind of like a reference because, like, just to touch on this for a bit with what I understand from sacrifices and that kind of stuff, is in the Old Testament, if you sinned or did something wrong, you sacrificed an animal, right? And that was your sacrifice. So kind of
Or the tip of your penis.
well, that was more like a promise.
Cool.
That was more like a promise to show God that you were one of His people.
I feel like that's sexist, all right? I feel like it's unfair for the men that we have to give up our
Okay,
penis
well, there are
skin.
women in other countries making up for that by
That's true.
taking genital mutilation.
That's like that's a weird thing. Like that's so frowned upon, like way frowned upon here. Like if
Yeah.
you look at it, they're like,
oh, and you're
cryptomoral, like
saying that circumcision isn't.
Yeah.
Which I totally agree with you. Yeah, I totally agree with
it's
you.
weird. I don't care.
You could call
cool.
the
I'm
barb-
down for circumcision. That's fine. It just seems weird to me that
it's a nicer looking penis.
it is. My penis looks
You
great.
could call the Barbaric Cultural Practices Hotline, and you could report.
Steve, my
You can
mom
know
and
you
dad
can-
cut off the tip of my penis
When I was a baby.
Oh my god!
You can report all the Jews.
Ben Prue as the cut.
Yeah, but one of the kind of distinctive beliefs, correct me if I'm wrong, of the Jehovah's Witnesses is that they don't believe that they're all just like one glob of Jesus-y goodness, right?
Ooh.
Like God the Father, God the Son, and the Holy Ghost, or the Holy Spirit.
No,
There are
they
three
they
individual-
believe. Yeah, like Jesus. I think. I hope I'm right about this. Would have been like an angel or like a godly being at Jehovah's side in heaven, until Jehovah decided to send him to earth to fulfill this sacrifice.
And so Jehovah is viewed as like God the Father.
So
Exactly.
he was
yeah.
picking favorites. He was like, I like this guy right here. You're my son now. He was like,
Well,
what?
because
Daddy.
do you guys talk about like the council in heaven or like the war before the earth happened, all that kind of stuff?
Wait,
No.
what? Oh, yeah. Satan and God?
So, yes, because that's how. So, from I think what you're talking about, what I understand of it is that Satan was also an angel, but he.
Wasn't he an archangel? That's what I was told. I don't know what the difference is.
I
but
don't know what the
arch
difference
is
Arch is
either.
better.
No, Ark is a little bit different.
You're an
There's
archangel,
like
my
7
friend.
archangels, and that's like they all end in like the I don't know if it's called the suffix el. So like Michael was an archangel, and they say that like he was like a very high ranking official. In
I
heaven,
thought
that kind of stuff.
Satan was an archangel.
He was high up, but he wasn't.
But
like,
was
an
his name
archangel.
Satan?
I
That's
don't
what I
know.
want to know. Like, was he Satan the angel until he was Satan the devil?
I think Satan's just a different terminology. I think he was Lucifer in heaven.
Yeah, that's what it was. Lucifer.
But he's still okay. Yeah,
Lucifer.
Lucifer.
So this is
It's
kind
weird
of
that they all got so many names, like Yahweh and God and the Holy Spirit, Jesus.
Well, because there's so
Jehovah,
many languages, right?
Satan,
And there's
yeah,
lots of books
Lucifer,
too, and so it's
devil.
also the way the books have been translated and how people have decided this book goes with this book and these characters in this book are going to be the same as these characters in this book. Like because the books were all written by different people.
Yeah.
At different times, in different places, all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. And then
Yo, I got this shitty book that tries to be like, oh yeah, this is why Jesus is real. Because well, first of all, he is real. That's like kind of a fact. But like, he's not the son of God isn't a fact. But it was like, this is why Jesus is the son of God. And then like, it was this guy who like used to do cold case files, I guess, and like was an atheist, and then he converted. And so he like does these arguments as to like why like using his cold case investigation
like
skills.
he found Jesus in the first 48 and was like, yeah, I found him.
Yeah, basically. He's like
Or maybe in a grilled cheese sandwich.
yeah.
Yeah.
So these like he uses his cold case investigation skills to then look at the Bible and then
Right.
like prove that that's why it proves that the Bible is true.
That's
And I'm like,
what-
bro, first of all, you're not looking at the right Bible. Like, there's 100 different Bibles. You could use different evidence. And the other one was like, it's clearly written by eyewitnesses of Jesus. All of the books were all written right after Jesus died by eyewitnesses. I'm like, dude, even Christians don't believe you on that one. Like, that one's not true at all. Like, that was the first evidence, and I read that and just shut the book. I was like, fuck this bullshit.
Well, that was the thing that alienated me from the religion, was that whenever I had a question, it always came back to the answer was in the Bible. And I remember the first time I asked someone, like, but isn't there an answer to this question that's not in the Bible? Like, maybe like something in history that's like recorded or something else that can also prove this for me. And then
Yeah, like, if you only have one reference, like,
Yeah.
it's probably made up. Like, I'm just gonna say that.
Well,
Like,
I mean, if you just let me say this before, because this is what I want to not get into, but like
Right.
you
Get
know what I
into
mean?
it.
We're not just here to talk about like what do the Jehovah's Witnesses believe. I mean,
Right.
that's going to be part of the conversation. But like one of the reasons that we wanted to have you on the podcast is that it's very not impossible, but in Canada, it's almost impossible to find someone who was raised a Jehovah's Witness, who is third generation, who doesn't practice anymore.
Isn't that crazy?
It's
because
incredibly
it's
interesting.
so indoctrinating.
My cousin,
Yeah, are you the only one from your family too, or did you convince anyone else to get out, or did anyone
no,
convince
I would
you?
never dare do that, because then I will lose everyone, because they'll all, like, then I'll get disfellowshipped.
Yeah.
And I've been baptized, so I can be disfellowshipped. And if I get disfellowshipped, then I just won't have a family anymore. So in order to avoid that,
You can be part of my family.
I have been really careful to not ruffle feathers
Yeah.
and to keep kind of like my...
Yeah, you don't have to wear the headphones if you don't want
Okay, I'm going to take the headphones off.
Yeah,
They're falling.
That's fine.
They're traveling. So my cousin, though, is gay, and he's in his 30s, and he was married, and then he had
To a
kids.
lady.
What's that?
to a lady.
Yes.
Okay.
And he had children.
You
There's
got
not a lot
laid.
of gay representation of Jehovah's Witnesses.
No, there's none.
Weird.
So then
That's super weird.
he came out. He divorced his wife, and he came out, and then the family obviously disowned him and shunned him and disfellowshipped him. And I didn't know him very well because he was quite a bit older than me. Because I guess, well, okay, so he's not 30 anymore because I'm almost 30. He's much older than me. But he came to my grandfather's funeral, and this was like a tipping point for me, was that they sat him at the back of the Kingdom Hall, and no one would speak to him. So then I blew up at like the family party after, because he called the house and he wanted to say like, I'm just calling to send my condolences to the family, and they hung up on him, and I like lost it. And I yelled at my
Jesus.
uncle. I was 18, so I was not a kid, but I remember it being really scary. But I was so fuming mad that I was like shaking, and I was like, he's as much my grandfather as he was my cousin's, and I can't believe that you like won't allow him to grieve with us, right? And so then I got like a talking to about like respecting and blah blah blah. But because
That's
of that,
crazy. Do you like they're having a conversation after they hung up on a dude for the fact that he is just gay? They have a talking to about respect.
oh,
like,
I know.
It's so ridiculous.
And I was in so much trouble. Like my uncle cornered me in a room, and he let me have it. And I think I probably just like sat there with like a stone face the whole time, because
Yeah,
a few years later, one of my little cousins, I said something about like, I was just joking, and I said something about like winning a battle or whatever, and she was like you and our uncle at that like funeral party. And I was like, oh, other people remember that. Like, I didn't think I made such a scene, but I guess I must have. Anyways, that's not the point. The point is, my cousin contacted me years later because I was the only one who spoke to him at our grandfather's funeral. And even though I was a lot younger than him, I think he was reaching out for like any family that would acknowledge him as a human being.
Well, that's got to be a really hard thing.
Oh yeah. So he found me in Edmonton, and he wanted to bring me to these things he was going to at the Edmonton Society Against Mind Abuse. It's called ASAMA as an acronym. And he said it's really like enlightening, like it's a support group, and everyone was from a fundamentalist religion, and they've either left or they've been thrown out, and it's like, it's healing.
What other would be fundamentalists? Like what?
I think that's a little bit up to the I think it's a little bit subjective because the woman who ran the meetings had been a part of she called it a cult, but it was a Christian-based faith that was in northern Alberta, and she was part of the inner circle. She was married to like the leader, and
Oh shit!
No, if there's a leader, it's a cult.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And then there were a lot of ex-Mormons there, and there were some Hutterites, like basically anything where, there was a Mennonite who'd never seen television until she was like 20, and she said the hardest thing was trying to relate to people because they'd make all these jokes about pop culture, and she wouldn't get it, and then she'd feel stupid, so she'd pretend that she did get it, but she would have no idea what people were talking about because she was so embarrassed that she'd never seen a TV show until she was an adult.
Well, that's got to be weird too, especially like, because I know I've had like just watching British TV and you don't get the cultural reference, but like we have expressions like, "Oh yeah, he's the Michael Jordan of cooking."
Right.
Like you're like, what the fuck's a Michael Jordan?
Or
Like
it's as
The
simple
Michael
as,
Jordan
like,
of cooking?
I don't know the Michael
What
Jordan.
do you watch?
The Michael Jordan of whatever.
You're
you know?
like, yeah, Gordon Ramsay, dunk that steak.
Or, but like you know,
No,
what I,
I
mean?
know
Like,
what you're
if
saying.
you're the greatest at something. People
You're-
call
yeah.
you the Michael Jordan of whatever the hell it is
yeah,
you do.
The Beatles were the Michael Jordan of the Beatles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly,
No,
Dan.
that's it, Dana. That's a
They were
joke.
the Michael Jordan of being human beetles.
So this is. Sorry to cut you off real quick.
That's okay.
Because this is actually like a big emerging market within like psychology and psychiatry right now, because there's so many people coming out that need support when they feel like they have been in something that mind controls them, whether it be Jehovah's Witness or Scientology or Mormonism or whatever they feel. Because you said it is subjective. I'm not saying those places do that. I'm saying that some people feel like they have been mind controlled,
Right. Yeah.
which is totally
That's
fine.
a really good way to put it.
And if you have a good support group, then like Joe Rogan does a whole podcast on somebody that just deals with those types of people.
Yeah. Well, this woman at Asama, she hooked me up with a Skype session with this woman who specifically deals with like Jehovah's Witnesses who are past, like she called them second generation. And when I told her I was a third generation, she was really surprised. Like she
Right.
was like, really? She was like your parents were born and raised? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, and their parents? And I said, they converted. So I don't know. I was like, I'm the third generation of Jehovah's Witness. And she was like, and you've left. And I was like, yeah. And she was like, they didn't kick you out. And I was like, no.
So you haven't been disfellowshipped.
No.
Do you want to just explain real quick what disfellowshipping would mean to?
Yes.
Because it's different for different religions.
Yeah, totally. So your immediate family, my brother, my mom, my dad, they would be allowed to speak to me if they chose to. It's called a matter of conscience.
What if you lived with them still?
Well, yeah. If I
Oh,
lived with them,
yeah.
then they would obviously talk to me. But I guess the guidance would be because it's a matter of conscience. The main idea is that bad association spoils useful habits. You hear that a million times a day when you're a Jehovah's Witness. And so your family is, for one thing, protecting themselves by distancing themselves from you because your bad association could spoil their useful habits. And then secondly, they always talk about tough love and how if someone is making poor choices, if we show them tough love, they're more likely to find their way back to making the right choices. So those are the two things at play there. Everyone else in the congregation cannot associate with me if I'm disfellowshipped.
Is it like the season finale of Game of Thrones where they shame?
Spoilers.
I've not
Spoilers,
seen
guys.
that.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I shouldn't have said that.
I don't watch
But
it.
there's a book written by he was a member of the governing body in like the highest council of Jehovah's Witnesses, who had, the way I understand it, he had lunch with his disfellowshipped brother, and because he was a member of the governing body, he was disfellowshipped for that.
And that's like, would he be like an elder?
Yeah, he'd be like the highest form of elder.
And would he have like a number?
No, I don't think.
Really?
I don't know. The governing body, when I was a kid, we didn't know very much about them. Like, we heard their names a lot. Like, the governing body has issued this new book, or they're sending us new literature, blah, blah, blah. But now they're starting to Skype meetings where at the meeting at the Kingdom Hall, they'll put on a video where the governing body delivers the message. So it used to be that the elders in all the different congregations would get the magazine and they'd get their topic, and
Like
then they would write their
Watchtower
own talk
and-
about it. Yeah, they'd get the Watchtower and the Awake, and there would be a topic in the front of the Watchtower, and let's say my uncle would be assigned a talk on that topic.
What is the Watchtower and the like? I have no idea what that is, so I think
it's
some of
their-
our listeners have got to be fucking confused.
It's their magazine publications, so it's like
Wait, how much? Because that's another weird, like, Christianity, as far as I was into it, I don't think had their own stuff. Like, they didn't have their own corporations. Like, they had corporations that were Christian corporations.
Right.
But, like, there wasn't, like, Christianity Corp. We make this magazine.
Oh, they're very corporate. Jehovah's Witnesses are run exactly like a corporate company, and you can look this up on the internet. Their model is completely corporate, and right down to the fact where if you are a Jehovah's Witness in Zimbabwe, you get the exact same literature every single week that you would if you were in Canada, translated in your language, and all the pictures are the same, and like...
That's like Mormons.
Is it?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you've got, like, Mormon and J-Dub Corp. Like, they're fucking Mormon Corp and J-Dub Corp, and they fucking keep shit. They keep tabs on, like, all the money and...
Well, it's
yeah.
for continuity, so
Well,
that
and what do they make? Like, do they sell product as well, or
No, so they have the Jehovah's Witnesses have a printing press in New York. They have they used to have a skyscraper in Manhattan,
Jesus, like J-Dub Corp?
and
Our
all the
product
people
is
who work
faith.
there are volunteers. They're Jehovah's Witness volunteers, so they work for free, but their lives are supplied to them. There's cooks who cook in the kitchen, and there are farmers. They have a farm outside New York that grows all the food for the Jehovah's Witnesses that work in the printing building.
So it's like communist.
I guess so. They all work. They're like a self-sustaining community.
Yeah, but like you don't get paid a certain amount. Like if you farm more than the other farmer, you don't get more shit.
No, I don't think so. Because my aunt and uncle are missionaries in Africa, and I was recently asking them about what they do because I always imagined that they just preach all the time, and they were like, "No, we're on the maintenance crew, so we go around to kingdom halls and houses and we're like Jehovah's Witness owned property, and we maintain like the washing machines and the anything that's mechanical."
That's crazy. So yeah, it's literally like a communist commune, almost like the farmers. They just farm, and in return, they get all their house maintenance taken care of, and they get, water, and they get whatever. People who do the printing press or whatever, they run the printing press, and in return, they get food
They
and
have
shelter
everything.
and all that.
They have graphic designers. They have
So
writers. They
you
have
literally-
lawyers.
So you do your job in exchange for what everyone else's job is.
Yes, and your faith. You're doing it for your faith.
but you
Well, yeah.
would also sometimes work your own job.
Well, so my aunt and uncle, all my aunt and uncles are missionaries of some form. Some of them are called circuit overseers, which mean that they travel around from congregation to congregation, and they have a circuit that they're in charge of, kind of like in a corporate company, the regional manager would be.
Yep.
And others, like my other aunt and uncle, live in Africa. But the ones that live here and are circuit overseers, and even my aunt and uncle in Africa, everyone donates money to them because everyone in the congregations like really admires the work that they do, and so like I've seen people give them thousands of dollars because
in the Jehovah's Witnesses, they do like a tithe. Like, do they
I know
like donations?
What is
Oh,
a
they
tithe?
do. Yes, sorry, I'm wrong. There's always a donation box at the back of the Kingdom Hall, but I was never old enough to put anything in it.
So tithing is basically it's an old law from the Bible where the word tithing means 10%. So what some churches do is that you pay money. Some people say pay 10%. Like in the Mormon church, it's you pay 10% of your annual income, and that supports.
Sick. They owe me $10 if I join.
And they no. So
why would they owe you?
Because I make negative $100 a year. I fucking
No.
spend more money on
But kind of back
gas.
to this disfellowship thing, like that's a pretty serious deal. Like you said, your parents they couldn't really talk to you if they chose.
Yeah, they could choose to talk to me and no one could say anything about it, but for their own, if they believe what's been taught to them, for their own safety, they would distance themselves. Yeah.
Right.
Because, I mean, even with me, the way that I am right now, I'm obviously not a practicing Jehovah's Witness. I have stretched ears. I have my lip pierced. Like, there's all these things that they don't approve of. I'm married to someone who's not a Jehovah's Witness. So they support me as much as they can, but conversations get just a little bit awkward sometimes.
Well, what if you just said, I don't want to be on the list anymore because you're still on probably
Wouldn't
like
that be magical
what-
if I could?
but you can.
No, I can't.
You sure you can.
Nope, because they've come to my house and they've tried to disfellowship me, and I've had to stop answering my door.
But you can't just say don't come here anymore.
I can get myself put on the do not call list. Yes.
So because I don't know how it works with the Jehovah's Witnesses, but I was raised Mormon, and so you're baptized, and then you're on like the registry of the church, basically. So you're on this list that just keeps track of all the members.
Oh my god. There's a list.
Well, yeah,
That's so crazy.
because you're a member of the church.
I guess.
Are you on a list?
But I never registered. I mean,
They must have your information down somewhere, which
Well-
you could ask them legally to not keep track of you anymore.
could I?
Oh yeah, absolutely you could.
I don't like being on lists.
But I feel like then they would make an announcement at the congregation.
To say that you're disfellowshipped?
Yeah.
So you don't want to do that.
No, because then, like, I'm in this comfortable limbo right now where all my family talks to me.
Yeah.
And, like, I had just had this party and all my aunts and uncles came and, like, we have to, like, suck it up and pray sometimes, but at least I can be part of my family. Because the other thing is that I can't be upset with my family for wanting to not talk to me if that's what the thing that they believe in above all else tells them they're supposed to do. Because it's almost like not even their choice at that point.
Yeah, it's not their fault. Like, that's just what they know.
And they think that by doing that, they're helping me because they're showing me tough love in order to help me find my way
But
back to what they
wouldn't
believe
it be
is right.
showing them tough love to say, look, you need to pick your family over?
I've rehearsed so many times what I would say if it came to that, but it's like, I don't know. And so many people have told me, like, you'd probably feel a lot freer if you were honest with them.
That's fucking tough, though. Like, that's tough in any situation just to be like, well, because you know there's, like, a real good chance that they're not going to budge. So if you're not willing to budge, then it's just this stone cold, like, you never get to talk either way.
Yeah.
But you're not fighting it. Like, you don't actively say, like, this is a bad religion, do you?
No. And I told my dad once that I believed in evolution, and he told me that I should probably not say anymore because he didn't want to deal with the consequences.
Because he would get disfellowshipped because he knew about it?
No. Well, no, I think it was more like...
Like, is he supposed to report you?
No, I think he was more saying, like, I don't want to know how far you've gone because, like, well, how did I told him, we were having this conversation and he was like, I don't know why you have to be so stubborn. Like, you know what's right and blah, blah, blah. And he literally said the words to me, I taught you to love God and you don't just forget something like that. I know you still love God. And I was like, well, no, I don't. And he was like, okay, stop there. He's like, what do you mean you don't? And I said, I don't believe in God. I believe in evolution. And I don't believe that evolution is the opposite of God. I'm not saying that. I said, but like in as far as everything I was taught, I think that science is more what makes sense to me about the origins of the universe than God. And he said, no, I won't allow it.
Is this podcast going to get you disfellowshipped?
Well, if the right people heard it, but probably they
You're not worried about that?
I'm not worried about that.
Okay, so we can put it up.
Well, yeah, Neil asked me about that. He was like, "Are you scared?" And I was like, "No." Like like Jehovah's
Well, yeah, that's the
Witnesses
other
don't
thing.
listen to podcasts.
That was the other thing. I was like, we can use a fake name if you want. And you're like, it's fine. I was
Yeah,
like,
whatever.
okay.
I'm not worried about it because that's the other thing too. I'm not gonna live my life in fear, right? Like I'm gonna be myself, and then if they choose their actions and I can't do anything about what other people do. I can only control myself, and I'm not gonna go around making choices about my life based on the fear of how other people are gonna react to it.
Sure.
But that's like I'm not naming my family members because I feel like that's their privacy and they have a right to that. But I totally feel like I have a right to speak about my own experience because I own that. That's mine.
Of course.
Yeah. I want to know, like, because it's so crazy that to get third generation and get out, was it just literally like logical thinking that made you leave?
No, it was so many things, and
that was the other...
I told you. I think there were like 3 things. One of them was
Do you remember when you first started to doubt?
Yeah, I was actually pretty young, and I asked my dad where God came from, and he said, like, well, he was just always there, and we can't understand that because we're beings that live in space and time, so we can't understand something that doesn't have space and time.
Dan and I literally had that conversation last night.
Really?
Yeah, standing outside of Rouge Lounge, outside of Dan's car.
Really?
Talking about, like...
Well, that's one of the questions that I used to have when I was a kid. And that never really made me question it too much because I was always satisfied with some of the answers, but it's still always been an interesting thought to me is that I used to ask all the time, well, where did God come from? You know? Or, like, does God have a God?
Well,
like,
yeah.
Or those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And I would always get answered with, well, he works in eternity, he works without time, so we can't understand it because we can't think of timeless thought.
Right.
That's a fine answer. It's an interesting way to put it.
Yeah.
But it still doesn't really answer your question.
Yeah.
That was the thing.
Yeah, so it always felt unanswered. Right?
That's one of the things that I think I got from science is if you had a question, there was an answer to it, almost always.
Yeah, and I liked that you were not always just finding any way to prove what you wanted to be true. You were always finding a way to disprove what you thought might be true, which seemed like a way more foolproof way to find the answer.
Yeah.
That was true.
But also, I'm not saying that, like some religions claim to have all the answers, but some of them still just seem to fall back on that. Well, just have faith.
Yeah.
You know.
But anyway, so you were saying to me one time, was it a project or was it?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So a big part of it, I went to theater school and a lot of my friends were gay. And that was really weird for me to get used to at first because I had never known gay people except my cousin who I didn't really have any contact with at all.
Yeah.
And
gay was bad, right?
And
like
gay was really bad.
You in your head thought you were supposed to not like these people.
Oh yeah, it was
what's the stigma from the Jehovah's Witnesses that you dealt with? I'm not saying this is their representation, but I'm just saying how is it represented to you?
That if you had impure thoughts or feelings like that, you needed to pray and God would get rid of them for you. And so people who gave into those thoughts were choosing to live a sinful, immoral life.
So they were purposely sinning by being gay.
Exactly. Yeah. So
weird.
Is that weird to you?
That's super weird to me. Because even as, like, well, the other thing was that was never, ever, ever, ever a contention in my, like, Catholic, like, air quotes, Catholic upbringing. Because at home, it was like, you can be gay if you want, you can be straight, you can be attracted to nothing, you can be attracted to both, we don't give a fuck, you can be attracted to a pillowcase for all we give a shit. So, like, at home, like, it never, like, and I always, like, I mean, there's things that are, like, homophobic, air quotes again, and sexist and racist that, like, not really that I think, but, like, you know, I'll make a racist joke, like, you'll make a joke about, like, a Jew being cheap or whatever, but I don't actually believe that kind of thing. So, like, racism and sexism and homophobia never really existed to me. So when I hear this, like, you believed and you genuinely thought, like, in your heart of hearts that someone was purposely being bad by being like, oh, I think that dude is hot and I'm also a dude, is so fucked to me.
It
like,
also sounds so childish to be like, you're being bad. Because, like, you're an adult.
Well, it's like sinful is just the adult way of saying being bad.
It is. It really is. Yeah. So it was really hard for me to get used to being in classes with these people that
that's like the first time
didn't
that
understand.
you were shook a little bit, or you started to question.
Well, one of my best friends was gay, and he was raised as a Catholic, and he was having this major, like, crisis while we were going to school because he was finally starting to accept the fact that he was gay because he was surrounded by all these other gay people in theater school, and it was like becoming a normal thing. So he was able to voice it and talk to me about how unfair it was that he had to believe that God had given him this test, and he was like, his whole life was going to be a test, and he was never going to be able to just have a happy relationship because everything was always going to be hard for him if he tried to live by God's law. And it would be even harder for him if he decided to go with what his gut was telling him, because then like the repercussions with his family and his own Catholic guilt and all of that. And that conversation really turned it around for me. Like I was like, yeah, that's not fair that you have to feel that way.
Yeah.
And if God is real, which I believed at the time he was, he would never do that to you. So then I was like, there's something off here.
Yeah.
So that was one thing for sure. And then another thing, which is so trivial, but was a really big deal for me, was, do you want to pick up on what is you stopping me?
No. I just wanted to go back because I remember you telling me, was this the project you said you wrote and there was 3 big things? Was that for school?
No, I went to this like weird party where you had to tell a story based on a theme and then you won a prize, and I won the prize, and the theme was surprises. So I had to tell a story about a time in my life when I was surprised, and I hadn't gone with anything prepared, but while people were telling their stories, I was like, oh, I totally have something for this. So I got up and I ended up winning, and I felt really bad because I was so unprepared, but I totally like stole the prize, and I was like, oh, just because I have a weird life. So that I felt bad. But this big surprise that was like an aha moment for me was actually Dungeons and Dragons, because my whole life I was taught that D&D was demonic, and like just like playing with a Ouija board or whatever, you're inviting demons in.
Which I love. My favorite thing on earth is when people are like, the Ouija board is evil. The Ouija board will get you.
I'm still scared of Ouija
and I'm
boards.
like, dude, it's made by Hasbro. It's got the stamp on it. Like,
Yeah, but
it's fucking Hasbro.
there's
It's
something
the people who made Mousetrap.
but there's
are
something
selling
about the
this.
idea of
Which
like,
is also demonic, Alex.
Monopoly.
That's just Satan catching your soul in a very clever game.
well,
The fun is catching its Mousetrap.
I've never played Ouija, but like everyone I know who has said that the thing moved.
No, they're fucking liars. It was one asshole like me who was moving around on anyone else. That's exactly what happened, you fucking pricks.
So you must have had pretty interesting restrictions on what you're allowed to do as a kid as well.
Yes.
Like, do you have any specific
wait,
examples you want to share?
I want to go back to the D&D story because I love it so much.
Okay. I'll finish that and then I'll answer
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So why did I go to... Okay, so I had always been taught that it was demonic and wrong and stay away from it and whatever. And so then I had gotten to this point, it was right at the end of college, because the place I went to was right beside the arts campus at Grant MacEwan. And I saw that they played D&D. And I was like having all these questions about my faith because I was so confused about this whole gay thing and who my parents told me were bad people. But then I'd got to know and they were actually really great people. And then I was like, you know...
Side note, gay people are fucking awesome. I love... like, which sounds weirdly homophobic in a good way, but like I've never really met a gay person where I'm like, they're mean-spirited.
No, they're just people. That's the thing. Like, it's like saying straight people are awesome. Some straight people are awesome. Some are assholes.
Well, no, but like,
Same
there's
with
a
gay
large
people.
majority. Like, you know how you can be like, there's a large majority.
Yeah, you get that with a group that's been pretty marginalized and
Yeah.
held down for many generations.
Totally. Like, they know what it's like to be the butt of a
They
joke,
tend to be
right?
a little bit nicer than the
Yeah,
average Joe.
but like, you can be like, New Yorkers are kind of dicks. And that doesn't mean every single New Yorker's a dick, but it's like a general consensus. Like, New York people can be kind of rude. So I think gay people can be fucking fun. They're the greatest to party with.
That's why
Yeah.
San Francisco's awesome.
Hence my confusion. So I was like, where am I going to find this answer? And then there was a place right beside the arts campus called the Adventurers Guild. And I saw in the window that they played Dungeons and Dragons. And I was like, you know what? I'm doing all these terrible things. I'm drinking.
Quote unquote terrible.
I'm drinking, like I'm partying, like I have a boyfriend, like I've done everything that I was never supposed to do. I've gone to art school, which my father told me I was not allowed to do. I had to basically sneak away to go to my audition.
Art schools?
Well, this kind of stuff is really crazy. Like, just to interject real quick, because as you're talking about what, university?
Yeah.
So most of my experiences with that kind of stuff was in high school, right?
Right.
Where the normal things were like really frowned upon. And it's incredibly stressful to grow up like that because you think that your soul's on the line if you're buddies with somebody that likes other guys.
Yeah.
Well,
And it's silly to think about now. As an
your
adult,
soul.
as an adult that isn't in depth of some kind of belief system like that, when you think about that, you go, that's ridiculous. I wish someone would have gone back and just sat me down as a teenager, been like, it's fine. Just like go hang with your friends, go to parties, go play Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to go to hell for having magic cards under your bed. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
silly things like that. So,
Where if
That's
my
right.
mom found magic cards under my bed, oh my goodness. So one time, this is a tangent, but you're gonna like it. The governing body put out a statement that Smurfs were demonic because magic is frowned upon. So lots of people don't even let their kids watch Disney movies because there's magic in
Yeah,
them.
of course.
I had to hide
Frozen.
Harry Potter books.
Ah,
I had to hide them under my mattress.
okay.
I'm not kidding.
my
Exactly. So you totally get
My
it.
dad would throw them out. I'm like, these are expensive, good books, Dad. Can you just leave me alone for a second? Like, please?
Just give me a second.
Oh my goodness. So
crazy.
they released a statement about the Smurfs being demonic, and my brother had a Smurf.
I like that they had to release that statement.
Oh, there's statements about everything. So my brother had a Smurf toy, and my mom was cleaning his room one day, and she just got really scared, and she threw it out the window, and we had like this 3-story house. So my brother comes home from school, and he finds his Smurf toy sitting in the snowbank, and he's like, what is my Smurf doing out here? So he grabs it, he brings it back in the house, he puts it back in his room. So the next day, my mother's in his room again.
Oh, this is great.
And she sees the Smurf, and she loses it.
Because she thought it like came back by itself or
She
something?
did, and
Yeah.
she threw it out the window again, closed all the windows, locked all the doors. My dad comes home, and she's like in stitches, like, you have to get rid of that thing. You have to get rid, like, it followed me back into the house. And then my brother comes home, and he's like, why does my Smurf toy keep ending up in the snowbank?
Mommy.
I was severely chastised because the Mormon church is big in Boy Scouts. So they run like Boy Scout troops through the church, basically. So you
Oh
can have
God,
meetings
there's so many pedophile jokes running through my chest.
Well, no, there's not. Pedophilia is not really an issue in the Mormon church.
I know, but it's just
'Cause
funny
they're allowed
that,
to
like,
get married,
It's an
so they're
issue.
not all, like-
it's an issue
Yeah.
in like the Boy Scouts, and it's
They
just,
encourage procreation like none other.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of adult guys
Keep
like with a lot of
going.
pent up weird sexual energy. I
That's
mean,
good.
there might be, but so I brought for one of my badges one week a binder full of cards that I had collected: baseball cards, hockey cards, and then I had magic cards. I had a few sheets of magic cards. And my scout leader took me aside and severely chastised me for having demonic, occult magic cards that were going to path of hell.
Right.
And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, these are cards. And he's like, this is bad. You need to get rid of these. And I was like, this is garbage. Like, I do not like this.
Oh,
So anyway, sorry, go on.
So I just so magic is bad. So I had gotten to this point in my life where I'd done everything bad. I'd done drugs, I'd done sex, I'd done alcohol, I'd done everything, and I'd done like I had to sneak away from home to
here's
audition for McEwen.
a weird question where I've had with that is because when I had sex, I was like, oh, this is cool. And like when I drank, I was like, oh, this is cool. Like it was always because it wasn't like frowned upon. And I always think that that made me less driven to do it because like when I was when I was 14 was the first time my parents allowed me to drink like with them. And so I was never driven to it because I was like, oh, it's just a normal thing.
Because it's not
Right.
forbidden.
Because
Yeah.
yeah, it's not forbidden. So like when you had that, were you like, this is the best? Why would they keep me away from this?
I mean, I don't know if I'm particularly rebellious, but yes, all of the like, I think I really feed off of like I'm hardcore. Like everybody think I'm hardcore, and that got me in a lot of trouble in university and afterwards because I always had to be the hardest partier, and I always had to be like the biggest disaster, and I kind of took pride in that, which is so stupid. Now, like, looking back on it, I'm like, man.
But yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying is I never got that way
Yeah.
because it was so accepted. But I'm sure
Yeah.
if I was told I wasn't allowed to be the hardest partier, I'd want to be the hardest partier.
Yeah.
Every time I jerked off, I thought I was going to hell. Like, legitimately.
I know.
Legitimately. I'm not kidding.
I know
I'm
you're
not kidding. Because they teach you about an eternal family in our church. And so every time I did that, I was like,
You were losing your family,
I'm like,
right?
I don't get to be with my family. I don't get to go and hang out with I'm done. This is it. So you go through this
But how
crazy
good was
cycle.
jerking off that you would do it anyways?
Well, for a while, I just didn't.
Oh, man.
Like, when I was preparing to go on my mission and on my mission, and even, like, for a while afterwards, I just didn't. And people, like, don't believe that. It's, like, crazy. Because some people are like, oh, I can go, like, a month or however long, and I'm like, I've gone like 4 years without it once.
Oh my goodness. So anyways, so you're there and you're like, well,
So,
had sex,
yeah,
that
so
was
I'm
awesome.
like-
Drank, that was
Yeah.
awesome. All these things I'm not
And
allowed
I'm thinking
to do.
like I liked it all way too much, so I should probably go have this weird demonic experience and just see how that goes. So I walk into the Adventurers Guild and there's no one there. It's an empty building, but there's a staircase.
Such a demonic.
Yeah,
The
right?
Adventurers Guild.
Yeah. And there's lights downstairs in the basement. So
The name
I
of an
follow the
80s
lights.
rock band.
So I follow the lights down, and this is on Stony Plain Road, like in like worst neighborhood. And like in retrospect, like I'm walking into the basement of an empty building just because there's lights, and I'm like, yeah, this is totally creepy. Like it was totally creepy. And then I get down there, and it's literally like all these dudes, most of them overweight. One of them so large he had to wear homemade pants.
That's amazing.
It was amazing. Like I was like, this is a group of people I've never seen before. And so I asked them, like, I think I literally went up to someone in my very proper English. I said, I would like to play Dungeons and Dragons. Do you do that here? And he said, yes. Have you ever played before? And I said, no. And he said, okay, well, we are not playing tonight, but if you come back on Sunday, come an hour early and I'll help you make a character. So I'm like, a character? Okay, sure. And I leave and I'm thinking that's pretty weird.
How many demons does it cost?
But
Well, when he said...
Did you think he was so fat because he was full of demons?
no.
When
no,
he
no.
said make, were you like, oh, we're going to conjure up a character for me?
No, because I didn't know what there were characters. So, and I was in theater school, so I was like, this is weird. Like, there's characters. Like, I think I kind of took it as a sign that I was in the right place because my life was in like all about like characters. So I was like, sure, we're gonna make a character. Like that was familiar vocabulary to me, so
Yeah.
it was comfortable. And I was like, great, that guy seemed harmless. He was so large, he had homemade pants. I'm gonna come back on Sunday.
Demon pants.
Homemade
And I'm
demon
gonna make
pants.
a character. So I go in and I go extra early because I'm like so excited, and I'm literally thinking that like shit's gonna float. And I sit down with this guy and I build this character, and it was really fun, like leafing through the books and picking out like what characteristics I wanted them to have, and like I got to pick some magic powers, and I was like, oh yeah, this is cool. And then like we get into the game, which I still didn't realize was a game. And then we get like probably an hour in, and I'm like, okay, we're like almost in a fight. Like we're going to have a fight soon. So that's got to be when it happens, because the game, like you try to be diplomatic, but then there's always a battle.
Yeah.
So then we get into the battle, and these guys are getting so excited that like they can't even sit in their chairs anymore. Like they're standing and they're all hovering over the board, and some of them are sweating, and they're like calling out their moves and moving their guys on this grid. And literally 4 hours went by, and I was like, holy shit, it's just a game. Like this is a game. This is a board game. I'm playing a board
Did you call upon the powers of Jehovah God?
Dear Jehovah
game.
God.
No, I was like so disappointed. And also like I was like, well, if they told me that this was demonism, like, well, what else were they wrong about? Like,
And also, demonism is not that bad now. Look how much fun it is. It's just a game.
I don't know. This is, I think, like 6 sweaty fat dudes in a basement is kind of my idea of hell, anyways.
But then
so
I
they
wanted-
could have been on to
but
something.
then I wanted to leave, right? Because I was like, well, this is not, like, is it over yet? The game was like, it was like the never-ending game. And then I felt like I had to stay because I would feel bad leaving. And then eventually I was like, you know what, guys, I have to go to work. I'm really sorry. I didn't realize it was going to take this long. And I left before the game finished. But I left, I feel like, as a completely different person. Because I was way more, I don't know, like I had more courage in different situations. Because I felt like that scary thing wasn't actually scary. So probably everything I'm afraid of is probably not scary.
Yeah, it's like probably
Like,
not that bad.
Your aha moment.
Yeah, that was totally my aha moment.
Like this is, I don't mean to be crass, but I remember like the first time that
Be
I like,
crass.
I remember, like, honestly, this is a weird story, but I remember the first time that I masturbated and didn't feel guilty.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I was like, I was an adult, like a straight up adult,
Yeah.
and I was like,
I always feel guilty, but it's usually just because of the porn I'm watching.
Oh.
Like
demonic Dungeons and Dragons porn.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
6 fat guys in a basement sweating.
So anyways, continue.
Yeah, sorry for that tangent. I didn't mean to.
No, good. You were.
But those aha moments are interesting for people that haven't felt that weird
Yeah.
guilt before.
Totally.
Because it's a totally different feeling that you've ever had.
Well, and then I felt like, I think another big part of it was now I know something that my parents don't know. Because my parents don't know what happens when you go to a Dungeons and Dragons game in a basement. So I'm officially on a completely different level now where they can no longer tell me that that's bad because they've never been there and I have.
This is like the best conversion story. The Dungeons and Dragons. Because some people it's like drugs or alcohol or sex or whatever.
Right.
But you're like, no, D&D.
It was totally
D&D.
And I didn't even like... So actually, I met a guy at that game who rode up on a motorbike and was like way too cool for school.
Sorry, I was just pushing that closer to you.
That's
I noticed
fine.
your-
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
And he, when I was leaving, was outside smoking, which I found out later he was waiting for me because he wanted to ask me for my phone number. And so then we ended up dating for like a year. And he really wanted to be a dungeon master. So
Like secretly, though?
What's that?
How was dating?
Oh, how was it?
No,
Like,
as
did you
far
have to
as,
keep
like-
it a secret from everyone or just your family?
So I
or-
had my secret dating started pretty early. When I was 15, I had a secret boyfriend named Stacy who lived down the street from my dad. I
That's
mean,
ballsy.
Why were we air quoting all that?
because his name wasn't Stacy.
And he didn't live down the
Oh no, he did, but Stacy didn't live down the street. My boyfriend lived down the
Oh, so you were just
So
like,
I would go.
"Hey, Dad,
I
I'm going
would.
to
I would be at
Stacy's."
my dad's, and I'd be like, "I'm gonna go visit my friend Stacy," but I'd really go and spend the night at my boyfriend's house.
Did he have a sister that you could cover it with?
No,
Because I used to straight up just tell girls that I wasn't allowed to date.
I used to too.
Yeah.
But then when I turned 15, my parents divorced when I was 12.
Okay. Really?
Oh, that must have been
Yeah.
a weird.
Yeah, and through all of that, that's not even the reason that I would, like, my mom blames herself for me no longer being a Jehovah's Witness because she made mistakes and that led to them getting divorced, so she thinks it's her fault. But I'm like, no, like, I got all the way to university and I still believed, even though you made all those bad choices.
Does she still believe that?
She does, yeah.
Okay.
But I'm almost like, thank you for
My mom-
opening up the door so
Yeah.
that I like had an opportunity to learn about what I believed or what I thought.
Yeah. I think that's just a parenting thing, though, because like my parents got divorced a few years ago, and like affect my life because like I'd moved out. Like I was like, there's nothing different. I just have to go to 2 different places if I want to see you guys.
Right.
But my mom still, and she said it out loud like maybe twice, but like I can still tell, like whenever I say something, like I'm like, I don't know if I ever want to get married or have kids. Like she's like, well, no, like I can tell she thinks it's her fault,
Oh.
and so I think that might be more of like a parenting thing than
Right,
a religion
yeah.
thing. But also, I have no idea.
So you're secretly dating
So
Demon Pants.
I was secretly dating Demon Pants, who wasn't one of these guys. He was like, he didn't look like anyone else at D&D. He was wearing like a leather coat. He rode a motorbike. Like, I was like, okay, yeah, you're cool. I'll give you my phone number. And then he was actually kind of a weirdo, but I dated him for a whole year. But what was my point in all of that? Oh yeah, he wanted to be a dungeon master, so he would make solo missions, and then I would go like play with him. Basically, like I'd be the character, and he would like be the DM. And then when we broke up, he took my character sheet, which was like such a burn because I'd worked so hard to get all these
my
things.
If your parents ever found out, they'd be like, that demon hoarder, like, he's got all these character sheets.
That's the worst part of any breakup is when they take your character sheet.
And then
No, that's
And
just
then-
his. What is that called when someone like keeps something so you have to go back and get it? Have you ever heard that
oh,
theory?
yeah.
Like catfishing or something?
Yeah,
is it?
no, catfishing is totally different.
I don't know.
But
I don't
like
know a lot of
when
that
you
kind of
keep
stuff.
like,
Yeah.
Holding
I
your
have
ransom?
like you like keep her shoes so she has to come back and get them so she has to see you. Like he's doing that with character sheets.
Which actually ended up really sucking when I got involved with Mike for D&D improv because we would play D&D to practice so that our skills on stage would be good. And I was always like, oh, I wish I had that character. Like I got
That's
so
funny.
far.
That's not that bad of a regret for dating somebody. Is
Yeah, I guess.
some people are like, oh, that person was emotionally destructive. You're like, my character sheet.
No, I think I emotionally destroyed him, actually.
That's so funny.
With all your skills on your character sheet.
Yes.
That was your magic powers.
Yeah,
So-
totally.
I want to get back to this because I didn't know that art school is frowned upon.
So this is the climate on this in the religion is changing. But like when my parents graduated high school, my mom didn't even graduate. She dropped out to become a full-time pioneer to go door to door.
Pioneer is the door to.
Everyone goes door to door on Saturdays, but pioneers do it as a full-time job.
Cool, because that's the other thing. They usually not usually, but when I've seen it, it's a family deal.
Yeah, you never go to a door by yourself.
So do pioneers go without their kids and husband?
Yes. So my mother would have been a full-time pioneer with probably she
another
would
check?
have signed up with another girl her age who she was friends with, and she dropped out of high school to do that. And that was really encouraged in my mom's day. Like, don't waste your time on schooling because we're in the times of the end and the world's going to end any minute.
Yeah.
And then at least this way, like, you're doing something useful for the world. So my mom dropped out. She never even finished. And my mom used to tell me stories about how my dad was the weird guy who'd be like on the table in the lunchroom preaching to everyone in the lunchroom.
Okay.
So they were both really hardcore. And
that's very hardcore.
Yeah.
Especially in high school.
I know. So when I told my dad I wanted to go to school, not only was I going to be going to school, but I was also going to be going to Edmonton and moving in with my boyfriend, who he just found out about, because I was like, I'm 18 now, I can tell him the truth. I've been dating this guy since I was 15. We'd been dating for 3 years. I didn't tell him that, but I did say, like, I have a boyfriend, and I'm moving to Edmonton, and I'm going to live with him, and I'm going to school, and I'm going to theater school. And my dad just said, like, I will, like, again, he was like, I will not allow it. Like, that's what he says to me when he really doesn't want me to do something.
Right.
And I had to say, I'm really sorry, but I'm already enrolled. I took the Greyhound bus to Edmonton and I did my audition. I got accepted. Like, I have my apartment and I've already paid my first month's rent. I'm leaving. And I felt so bad about that for so long. But he's obviously moved past it. He didn't come to any of my shows in first year. And then in second year, he started coming to my shows. So then obviously I was like, okay, he's coming to terms with this. And then it wasn't even until about 3 years ago, he asked me, do most people help their kids with like school fees? And I said, it depends. But a lot of my friends, their parents paid for school. And he's like, I just feel really bad that I didn't support you through that. So he started actually paying my student loans recently because he's completely come around and he feels bad for not supporting me. Also, probably because the world hasn't ended yet.
Well, haven't also
because
the Jehovah's Witnesses predicted like the end of the world
several times,
about like 3 or 4 times.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's a weird,
and it's never happened.
No,
that's a weird one for me. Like, because they get specific dates.
Oh yes.
Like they're like, it's gonna end at this hour.
The reason my grandfather converted, the religion got really, really, really big after World War II, because what they were preaching at that time, they had devised a mathematical equation out of numbers they took from the Bible that got the year, I think it was 1944.
Yeah.
And was that the year the war started?
Yeah.
War ended.
Okay, so that
but
was
1944
the year.
was when Hitler died.
Okay, so one of those years, maybe it was 43, I don't know, but one of those years when things got drastically different, when people were noticing, like, this war is like no other war that has ever happened before, because all of a sudden there were, like, automatic weapons, and there were, like...
Yeah, so the war started in 39, Hitler died in 44, and we started going to concentration camps and seeing what was happening in there.
Right.
So I think that was a big part of it. Was they were seeing like the huge massacres and what the weapons were doing, and when the WMDs got dropped, it was 44, I believe, as well.
So the number that I'm remembering is 1944.
Yeah, my guess is when they looked at weaponry and stuff, it was nukes, like atom bombs. So that would have been Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
So this was the first war where you were no longer facing your enemy in a noble way.
Right.
You could kill someone without ever having to look them in the eye, and it felt, I think, to the people who lived through that, like the world had just instantly become a much more terrible place. So the Jehovah's Witnesses were preaching at that time that this year, 1944, was the year that Satan was let out of his enclosure that God had him trapped in, and that is the signal of the beginning of Armageddon. It's something that's written in Revelations. So I think that really connected with a lot of people who'd been in the war, because they were like, oh, that makes sense. That's why the world just changed.
Yeah, that's why we blew up a whole city in a second.
Really, they should be taking credit for predicting the death of Hitler.
Maybe Hitler was the devil. Or maybe
it's true. But because based on that equation, they had predicted, like, if that's the beginning of Armageddon, then it is going to end soon. But it never did. So they had an end, and then it didn't happen. And then they had an end, and it didn't happen. So now they just say we're living in the last days. Because from 1944 until today, we're still in this period of test that is the beginning of Armageddon.
Yeah. Is that when the first... like because Jehovah's Witnesses are very anti-war. They won't join the army. They won't.
They're very anti-politics as well. Like the law of man holds no sway. They don't do jury duty. They don't vote. They don't sing "O Canada." They don't believe in patriotism.
They don't celebrate birthdays.
Well, no, but that's completely different.
Yeah.
That's because you're not supposed to put like celebration of anything above God or whatever, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a few reasons, but that's the only one that ever really made sense to me.
Well, I feel really bad because in high school we had 2 or 3 kids that were Jehovah's Witnesses, and one of them was in our class, and I noticed from day one that she would never stand for the national anthem. And for a while I was always like, hey, you need to get up, please and thank you. And no one really ever, like, it wasn't a big deal, and she was just like, oh no thank you. Right. And then one day the teacher was like, hey, you can't do that, Dan. And I was like, well, why not? Because I just didn't understand.
Because you were like, I'm patriotic and you should be too.
Well, everyone in the class would stand up, and she was like right next to me or something, and I was like, get up,
you were
please
like,
and
you're
thank
being
you.
Disrespectful.
I'm like, what are you doing? Yeah. And so have they always been anti-war, or was it since like the 40s when they predicted that?
I don't know. It's very possible that that's something that developed over time. Like my dad remembers celebrating Halloween as a kid, and then they did away with that afterwards.
Yeah.
So
that's weird. I feel like that would have been one of the first things to go.
I know, right? Like how long did it take you to figure out that Halloween was demonic?
Yeah, like what? Like that is the whole reason. Hallows Eve, bruh. Like we might as well be celebrating the Day of the Dead, Cinco de Mayo shit. Like, that's crazy. All right, well we're at an hour and 20 almost in the podcast. So it's been fun, but I think that's our time. Did you have anything else? Any other crazy stories you wanted to talk about before we get out of here?
No, I was pretty open. Just come and answer your questions.
Do you know the words to "O Canada" now?
Oh, I think.
Do you want to sing it?
I'm
kidding. I'm kidding.
Did you know them when you were a kid? I was
no,
like, you wouldn't know? That's crazy.
And I didn't know Christmas songs. The first time I got hired to do a Christmas play by a theater company, it was really embarrassing to say, like,
because everyone
someone
knew
needs to teach me all these songs. And they were like, what?
That's crazy.
So I had to sit down with the accompanist and, like, practice hard. Like, I had to learn all the words to all these songs I'd never heard before.
That's crazy. The first time you heard them, were you like, oh, these are nice?
Well, I'd heard them, like, in the mall and stuff. But
you're like, what are these?
Know the words.
Yeah.
Like, I knew
what
the tunes.
Those?
If there's anyone listening that, I mean, is a Jehovah's Witness or like not struggling, but is dealing with the kind of same stuff, do you have any advice, or like what would you, is there a support group you still go to, or?
No, you know what? I ended up I went to that support group like maybe 5 times, and I realized that it was just making me angry. Like I would leave mad, and I didn't want to. I was like, I don't feel like that in my day-to-day life. So if talking about the way that this stuff has made all these people in this room feel is making me angry, then I probably shouldn't go there. And it also felt like leaving one group to just find another group to cling on to, and I really wanted to like be independent of that. So I stopped going, but I think. Thinking back on it, even just going to those 5 sessions was really helpful because it made me think like, maybe I am dealing with some things that other people haven't had to.
Right.
So maybe I should cut myself some slack if I'm feeling guilty about something. Like maybe I don't have to feel guilty about that. But I think that's the biggest thing is like, I don't know. It's all about choices. Like, as long as you feel good about the choices that you're making, then it shouldn't matter what somebody else thinks you should be doing.
Right, unless you're like hurting somebody or something.
Obviously, yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
so I mean, other than like saying go try Dungeons and Dragons, do you have any advice for anyone dealing with that kind of stuff?
The only advice I have is do everything you're not supposed to, and then decide for yourself if the rules make sense for you.
Well, that's cool because I think that's a weird, and this is totally unrelated, but the whole Romspringa thing with the what are the people that don't use technology. There's so
Amish.
many
Amish,
Yeah,
yeah.
the Amish. They're like, oh yeah, you can go and try all the things that we told you not to do,
Right.
and if you like it, stay. If you don't.
Right.
I think all religions should do that. I think they should be like, listen, this is stuff we told you not to do, but try it, and if you don't like it, God will forgive you, and if you do like it, then just go ahead.
The attrition rate for most religions would skyrocket.
Yeah, it'd be awesome. People would fuck once and be like, I'm good. I'm gonna keep doing this, I think.
Well, I mean, I think this is probably one of my favorite podcasts.
Yeah, me too.
So far.
It was a little more serious, but I really, really, really enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, sorry for
Oh, don't worry about it.
not being so funny.
No, that's all right. We didn't expect it to be hilarious. So.
Good.
It's good. Thanks for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Do you have like Facebook or Twitter you want anyone to follow you on? or-
Sure. Twitter, I'm Patterned Attic. PATTERNEDATTIC.
One word?
Follow
Yeah,
you.
one word. And Instagram, the same thing, but with an underscore between Patterned and Attic.
Sweet. Do you have any show? Are you still doing theater stuff? Do you have any shows you want
No,
people to
I've
check
been
out?
working. I'm on a saving spree, or I guess you could call it like I'm in hoarding season, where I'm filling my cheeks like a squirrel for maybe taking a dive into something new. But I'm still doing photography and stuff, so if you follow me on Twitter, that's mostly what you'll see.
Some photography stuff.
Yeah.
Cool.
Is it you're saving for the Armageddon?
Yeah, for the end of days.
But what will I do with money in paradise?
Bury me with my things. All right. Well, yeah. Hopefully, if you need a photographer, hit April up on the Twitter or the Instagram.
Killinsphotography.com.
Killins Photography. Also, if you follow her there, I'm sure any projects will be on there. Any plays or anything you'll do in or fringe stuff or
Yeah.
whatever for next year.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming on. I've been Alex. As always, please just check out Northern Content Network for more great podcasts. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. It's The Fortin.
And I am at the Dan channel, all that stuff. This has been the worst podcast ever.
And as always, fuck Desjardins Insurance.